batch of Twitter files into the conversation, the one that Matt Taibbi exposed. What he did was confirm that a completely true story by the New York Post about Hunter Biden that came out a month before the election was suppressed by Twitter executives, including at the behest of FBI agents and former security state officials. So this has now been exposed. There was no legitimate basis for suppressing that story. It was true. It was a respected publication. They did it anyway. This is election interference. The same people who pride themselves on strengthening democracy are engaged in this wide-scale censorship of one side of the political debate, including of true stories before an election. And then they puff out their chest and say, we're protecting democracy. They're not protecting democracy. They're interfering with democracy. They're interfering with the public's right to know. And then we look at a country like China and we say, well, we're so much better than them because they've got this problem over there where the state and big tech are colluding to create a Big Brother-like system. Well, what is this? What are these tools that have been exposed?
1%
this is a Big Brother-like system.
Okay, yeah, but just I know you want to make it like an equivalency. It's less than a 1% equivalency because in our society, we can have moments like this and we can have investigations. So just to put it in perspective.
Yeah, Jacob, I don't think we're equivalent, but what I'm saying is that this is very much like a Big Brother social credit system that was being perpetrated.
Alarm bells should be going off. This should be an alarm bell going off.
And if Elon didn't decide, we had this one idiosyncratic billionaire who believes in free speech. If he didn't decide to take this on, we would never have known this stuff.
Okay, tell me what happened in between these two things. There is an attorney at Twitter, and I don't know the details of this.
I do
not work for the Twitter Corporation. I do not speak for the Twitter Corporation. Sachs does not work for the Twitter Corporation and does not speak for it. But there was, in between these two drops, something that happened.
Yes. So basically what was discovered, and this is all just publicly reported, is that a former FBI lawyer named Jim Baker had now become deputy general counsel at Twitter. And this guy, Jim Baker, is like the Zelig of the whole Russian collusion hoax. He was involved in the FISA warrants that the FBI applied to the FISA courts that had all the errors and omissions. He was involved in the Alpha Bank hoax. He was the guy that Perkins Coie lawyer Sussman was feeding this phony scam to. And I don't think he was officially sanctioned, but basically he was asked to leave the FBI. And then lo and behold, where does he land? At Twitter. And he is involved in their content moderation policies. I think what it shows is how deeply intertwined our big tech companies have become with the security state. Now, how did this get exposed? Well, Bari Weiss was basically putting forward document requests for the latest batch of Twitter files, and she wasn't getting anything back. And she's like, what's going on here? And the guy who's giving her the files his name is Jim. And she's like, well, wait, Jim who? And she finds out, wait, Jim Baker? Wait, that Jim Baker? The New York Post had a long story about this guy. And so it was discovered that the guy who was curating the Twitter files was this former operative of the FBI who was involved in the Russian collusion hoax and then was involved in their blacklist decisions. So in any event, once this came out, Twitter fired him. And then, Bari apparently received all of these files that are now the second batch of the Twitter files.
And just to be clear, that's not James Baker if you're, thinking it's the former Reagan cabinet member. Not James Baker. This is Jim Baker, who's a different person.
Right. But a lot of people are wondering, well, how could this have been missed? Listen,
he's an FBI, ex-FBI
These guys
correct?
don't want to be found. I mean, this is, some people call it, the permanent Washington establishment. Some people call it the deep state. The administrations come and go. The people who work in Washington stay there forever. And they can simply effectuate policy by outlasting everybody else and clandestinely implementing what they believe. And they've become a constituency of their own that exercises power like a Praetorian Guard in Washington. So in any event, this guy is an expert at boll-weevling himself into the bureaucracy.
Great. Praetorian Guard, you're on fire.
So, hold on a second.
Hold on. So when they finally, hold on a second. When they finally rooted this mole out of the FBI. He bull-weevils himself into another powerful bureaucracy.
What is that word?
Twitter.
Bull-weevil?
Bull-weevil. He like burrows. Like burrows. Like burrows. Like that. So he digs his way into the Twitter bureaucracy to the point where he isn't even found. And then somehow he has put himself in the position to be intermediating the Twitter files. Can you believe this? So once it was discovered,
a unit of the Imperial Roman army that served as personal bodyguards and intelligence agents, the Praetorian Guard. Okay, got it.
Well, you understand what happened is that the Praetorian Guard originated because they were to defend the life of the emperor, and then what happened? That then they became so powerful that that whoever bribed the Praetorians would become emperor, and then finally the last step is that the Praetorians themselves would pick the emperor, and whoever basically led the Praetorian Guard would be the next emperor. In any event, I mean, we're not at that point yet. But the point is, look, the point is that these security state officials have power that they should not have. Okay, that's the bottom line. They should not be involved in our elections in this way. They should be completely nonpartisan and non-political. They should just do their jobs as law enforcement officials. But we know from the Hunter Biden story that a very important piece of this was the pre-bunking, that the FBI went to Facebook and Twitter and social networks and said, be on the lookout for a story about Hunter Biden. It is Russian disinformation. And they primed these social networks to suppress that story when it came out. That was something they never should have done. And they knew the story was not fake. They knew it was not Russian disinformation because they had the laptop in their possession since 2019.
Okay, that has not, the provenance of the laptop is still being reviewed in fairness. And there's still hold on.
You're wrong.
And there is an investigation going on of Hunter Biden. You also have to put the context in here, and please let me finish. There is a context here of there was massive election interference going on, both sides of the aisle, Republicans, Democrats, all wanted to see the Russian interference and the Ukrainian interference and Trump's encouraging the Ukraine and the Russians to interfere in elections. Everybody was on high alert, and that happened to drop like it was announced 30 days before, and it dropped 10 days before the election. So everybody was on high alert, and I agree it was not done properly. Hold on,
that's why it was the perfect excuse.
It should have been done properly. They should have come out publicly and say, we don't know the provenance of this. It could be hacked. It might not be hacked.
Jason, they knew.
Let's wait and see. We have to reserve judgment.
No, listen, let me tell you what happened. Let me just tell you what happened, okay? So
and make sure you source this.
I will. So look, it's all in the New York Post, okay? They've done
great.
Nobody has refuted it. Nobody has refuted it.
It's a super partisan paper. Go ahead.
No, let me just get this on the record here. So
from the Post.
The FBI was given the laptop in 2019 by the laptop store owner. Those guys have forensics. They have cyber experts. They knew the laptop was real. We know it's real now. Nobody questions that. In fact, the FBI has admitted that the laptop was real and that the Hunter Biden files are real. Nobody disputes that, okay? But what they did before the election is they used this excuse of Russian disinformation to discredit the story before it even came out. But they had no business getting involved in the story that way. They simply didn't. They should have stayed out of it completely. I don't understand how you can possibly justify that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do have to look at the context of that time period when Hillary's emails were hacked and we had a president.
That's why it's a perfect excuse.
Well, I didn't finish the sentence. And we had a president, which you will agree, our presidents and presidential candidates should not be encouraging foreign powers to hack their adversaries. You agree with that? Do you agree with that? Answer my question. Do you agree that presidential
you're still
presidents...
wrapped up
Answer the question. Why do you have to divert?
I know what you're
going to personally
Listen,
attack me.
No, I'm not.
Don't personally attack me. Just answer the question. Should
this
presidential
is your election
candidates...
denial for 2016. You're still wrapped up on this. You can't let it go.
Again, you personally attack me. You don't answer the question. That's fine. We'll move on. You can't be intellectually honest. That's fine. The audience knows you're not being intellectually honest.
You don't even know what you're talking about.
If you could answer the simple question, should presidents encourage foreign powers to hack their adversaries, then you would be being intellectually dishonest. I am absolutely disappointed that you will not answer that simple question. It's an obvious yes. It's an obvious yes. We don't want people doing it.
Of course, but I don't really believe that happened. I don't really believe that happened. You won't say it because you know Trump's
going to win the primary. Let's keep going. China
honestly, I don't know. Wait. Listen, I've said so many times on this show that he's not my candidate. I don't know what you're talking about. You're going all the way back.
He'll wind up being your candidate when he wins.
What you're doing right now is like delusional. You're going back to some throwaway comment he made at a rally in 2016. It's got nothing Absolutely nothing to do with this story. And the fact you're even bringing it up is like pure TDS. And I don't want to waste any time talking about it.
Name calling instead of answering a question. That's your technique. Your technique is to call me names instead of answering the question.
I want to unmuddy the waters. I want to make one more point about this Hunter Biden thing.
Another technique that I'm muddying the waters. I'm not muddying the waters.
You are. I don't know
answering the question. Let's move on.
No.
Let's move on.
I want to make one final point.
Okay, I'll make a final point.
There was a letter. Listen, there was a letter with this Hunter Biden thing. Mm-hmm. This is 2020 election, Jason. We're not going back 2 elections ago. I want to talk about the most recent one.
Okay, fine.
You had Clapper, you had Comey, you had 50 of these security state officials. They write a letter saying that the Hunter Biden story has all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. They claimed that it was Russian disinformation when it wasn't. They knew it wasn't. And it was the same story that the FBI was telling Twitter, and it was the same story that these Twitter executives were indulging in, even though they all knew or had reason to know it wasn't true. And they suppressed the New York Post story anyway. I don't know why you're bringing up this Trump stuff. It has nothing to do with the real issue here. Hold on a second. The real issue is this. Does social media have the right to suppress true stories put out by our media before the month before an election? Yes or no?
I'll answer
How do you defend that?
I will answer your question yes or no, and you will not answer mine because you're being intellectually dishonest. Yes, we should not suppress news stories. If it was, and I will argue both sides, if it was Snowden, if it was the Pentagon Papers, if it's Hunter Biden's laptop taking out the sex stuff, which we both agree on, or if it is Russia and Ukraine, where your presidential candidate at the time, Trump, asked Zelensky to find dirt on Biden before the election, and he asked the Russians to hack Hillary's email, and they did that, and they released it 10 days before the election. That is facts that happened, and that is the context.
That's not what this was.
You said you would let me speak. You said you would let me speak, and you will let me speak.
You're muddying the waters.
No, stop interrupting me and stop insulting me. I will say my part, you said yours, and then we will move on. The fact is, Trump encouraged hacking of other candidates, and he did it twice in a 4-year period, back-to-back elections. We need to be on high alert when you have a Republican candidate, Trump, doing something so absolutely treasonous.
This is why it's a perfect cover story. This is why it was a perfect cover story, is because
but you won't address the treasonous behavior. Let's move on.
I don't think it was a perfect phone call. I think it was, there were lots of shenanigans. There were lots of shenanigans. Okay. I'm not defending, hold on. I'm not defending anything Trump did. Okay. I don't feel the need. Okay. I never defended it. But the deal is that you're letting your TDS
I don't
justify,
have TDS. He's treasonous.
You're allowing this Russian disinformation to be a cover story.
No, I said I don't think Post should have been blocked. You're misconstruing.
Then why are you even bringing this up? It was not Russian disinformation. The context
under which the reason I'm bringing it, I agree that the Post should have been blocked.
The context made it a great cover story.
That's your interpretation. The context also is everybody was on high alert, waiting for a hack to drop, and in fact, a hack dropped 10 days before. That was not a hack. Okay, we found out subsequently it was a hack. That's why there needed to be time.
Point. They knew at the point.
Twitter and Facebook did not know. Twitter and Facebook didn't know. That's the point. They don't know.
Hold on a second. No. Taibbi, you go back to the Twitter files, the first drop. Jim Baker, hold on a second. Jim Baker and Vijaya Gadde said, okay, that there were a lot of internal questions about whether that Hunter Biden story could be justified under the hacked policy. Okay. And there were many legitimate questions raised internally about whether they could maintain that party line. And the emerging view was that they could no longer maintain that line. And still, Gadde and Jim Baker said, no, we will maintain the idea that this was hacked information until proven otherwise. Even though it was not hacked, it was a New York Post story.
Okay, let's move on. We're going to agree to disagree. Let's move on.
Why are you bringing up all this like irrelevant stuff?
The audience and the other besties want us to move on. So let's move on.